6:15. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The news edited by Catherine Pereira and read by Lavani Vijayatunga. First, we take a look at the headlines. A high-level U.S. delegation to visit Sri Lanka tomorrow. Import of 10 essential items through open accounts permitted. The Ministry of Education says schools will function for 3 days next week. The Army Commander says the Army will provide its support for the projects initiated by the Coastal Conservation Department. Those are the headlines, and now more to the details of the local news. The U.S. Embassy in Colombo announced today a high-level delegation representing the U.S. Department of Treasury and the U.S. Department of State will visit Sri Lanka from tomorrow to the 29th. Members of the delegation include Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Asia, Robert Caproth, and Ambassador Kelly Kindling, who is also the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for South and Central Asia. The visitors will meet a wide range of political representatives, economists, and international organizations, the embassy said in a statement. In all their meetings, they will explore the most effective ways for the U.S. to support Sri Lankans in need, Sri Lankans working to resolve the current economic crisis, and Sri Lankans planning for a sustainable and inclusive economy for the future, the U.S. Embassy said further in its statement. The Ministry of Trade says that permission has been granted to import 10 essential items including rice, sugar, wheat flour and dal through open accounts. Permission will be given with effect from 1st of next month. The government has taken this decision considering the price increase of essential food items day by day. Minister Nalin Fernandez said that the objective of this move is to provide essential food items to the consumers without any shortage. This is the news from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. And we continue with more local news. The Education Ministry has planned to conduct academic activities in the schools for 3 days in a week in the urban areas where the schools were closed last week. Accordingly, schools will function on Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays from 7:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. These days are not considered as private holidays for teachers who are not present for teaching duties due to transport issues. Principals of the respective schools have been given the authority to decide on the number of days where the primary sections of these schools could function. If the teachers in those schools will still find it difficult to travel, the principals of those relevant schools have the authority to release them, the ministry said. Learning activities should continue online, and teaching, assignments or home-based activities for students who are absent during these particular days, they said. Army Commander Lieutenant General Vikum Lienage says that the Army will provide its fullest support to the Coastal Conservation Department. He made these remarks at a discussion held with the Director General of the Coastal Conservation Department, Rear Admiral Anura Ekanayaka, recently. The Director General updated the Army Commander on the future projects to be implemented by the department. Meanwhile, the Sri Lanka Customs has apprehended 650 grams of gold jewelries brought to the country illegally from Dubai. A woman has been taken into custody in this regard. The customs stated the value of the gold is nearly 11 million rupees. And to conclude the local news, the headlines once again. A high-level U.S. delegation to visit Sri Lanka tomorrow. Import of 10 essential items through open accounts permitted. The Ministry of Education says schools will function for 3 days next week. The Army Commander says the Army will provide its fullest support for the projects initiated by the Coastal Conservation Department. And that was the local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhaloka Vedamahatma.
The main news story for this evening, police media spokesman SSB Nihal Taldua says the relevant advice has been given to the police officials to take legal action against the persons who behave in an unruly manner at the fuel stations. The advice also indicates officials to video such incidents. And that was the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhaloka Vedamahatma.
In Washington this evening, supermarkets have taken several measures to minimize the use of polythene, but they say the consumers are not much interested in this regard. It will help to safeguard the environment. The workers of the supermarket have pointed out that it is important for the consumers to pay attention in this regard. That came to you in Watchlight, and now we move on to the headlines of the world news. G7 foreign ministers blame Russia for global food crisis. Travelers hit by a third day of disruption. World's deepest shipwreck discovered. Those are the headlines, and now more to the details of the world news. The foreign ministers of the group of 7 nations have agreed that Russia's invasion of Ukraine is causing a global food crisis. In talks yesterday, they called on Moscow to refrain from actions that hinder food exports. They accused Russia of bombing grain silos in Ukraine and blocking exports at the Black Sea ports. Russia blames a food shortage on the Western sanctions. The G7 ministers have also expressed their support for the European Union's attempt to help Ukraine ship grain by land. Rail passengers across Britain face several restricted services as strike enters its third day, with a disruption expected over the weekend. Despite continuing talks, no resolution has been reached in the dispute over job losses, pay conditions, and people are being advised to only travel by train if necessary, with just 1 in 5 services running today. Some 40,000 members of the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union walked out on Tuesday and Thursday this week. Some commuters were able to work from home on the first 2 days of strike, but there are several big events in London over the weekend, including a sellout Rolling Stones concert in Hyde Park and Ed Sheeran at Wembley. Explorers have found the deepest shipwreck ever identified. A U.S. Navy destroyer Escort sunk during the World War II. The USS Samuel B. Roberts went down during the Battle of Samar in the Philippine Sea in October 1944. It lies in 6,895 meters of water. Texan financier and adventurer Victor Vescovo, who owns a deep-diving submersible, discovered the Sami B battered but largely intact. The vessel is famed for a heroic final stand against the Japanese. That was the world news, and now let's move on to development news. Cultivation activities have commenced in 200 acres of land identified in the Western Province. This program will be initiated by the Urban Development and the Ministry of Housing. That came to you in the segment of Development News.
Sports News is brought to you by
Sampath Bank. We present your future.
Moving on to sports news, the Indian women's team won the T20 match against Sri Lanka. Batting first, Sri Lankan team scored 125 runs for the loss of 7 wickets at the end of their 20 overs. India's women's team scored 127 runs for the loss of 5 wickets in 19 overs. That was the sports news. Business news coming up.
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB U Trust.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
In business news, the Colombo Stock Exchange moved up marginally yesterday with the announced Expo Lanka Holdings 1.19 rupees cash dividends per share the previous day. The stock market rallied because of the Expo Lanka dividend payment. It is quite attractive at this juncture, market analysts said. That was the business news. Economic news follows.
Business News, sponsored by
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. Will you be the lucky winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee? 50 gold sovereigns for the top prize winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee. Scooters for the 10 second prize winners. iPhones for the 10 third prize winners. Mountain bikes for the 29 fourth prize winners. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB U Trust.
economic news, courtesy of
I bought my daughter a laptop for her work by managing my finances. Whatever the expenses may be, I can't afford to miss out on life's special moments like her birthday or our anniversary. So you need to invest to make your family's future flourish.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibilities. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
And in economic news, creating 100 entrepreneurs in the Bathula district will be implemented. It will be implemented under the advice of the district secretary of the district. Plans have been made to cover agriculture, self-employment and technology sectors. That was economic news and the weather report to conclude.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibility. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
And finally, the weather report. The Met Department says the showers or thunder showers will occur at times in the Sabargama province and in the Kandy, Nuwara, Galle and Matara districts. Several spells of showers will occur in the western and northwestern provinces. Fairly strong winds up to 50 km per hour can be expected at some places in the western slopes of the Central Hills, northern, north central and northwestern provinces and in the Trincomalee and Hambantota districts. And before we conclude this bulletin of news, let's get back to the headlines once again. A high-level US delegation to visit Sri Lanka tomorrow. Import of 10 essential items through the open accounts permitted. The Ministry of Education says schools will function for 3 days next week. The Army Commander says that the Army will provide its support for the projects initiated by the Coastal Conservation Department. And with that, we conclude this bulletin of news.